All right, I'm recording to the cloud.
Okay, great.
There we go.
Hey, welcome everyone. We're so delighted to have you join us for probably, I think this is our next to the last event in our Global Citizenship Project series. For the last 2 years, we have been focusing on the environment and understanding our environment. And we have invited Dr. Terry Konn to reprise her fall presentation where she discussed the poverty and the relationship to the environment and environmental issues and how it impacts poverty in communities around the world. Dr. Konn is professor of radiologic technology here at the college, and she has traveled extensively all over the world. A lot of time in Africa, in Ghana, Rwanda, South Africa, and she also has an interest in Native American communities here in the U.S. So we had such a great response and feedback from her presentation last fall. So we asked her to reprise it again this spring. So without, and my name is Dr. Jan Thomas. I'm director of the International Education Center, and I'm delighted to see so many of you here this afternoon. If you're here in New Jersey, it's a little bit rainy outside, but we know that your hearts are warm. So thank you so much for joining us, and I'll turn over the electronic reins to Dr. Konn.
All right, thank you, Janice. And let me just share my screen. And as I am talking, if you do have any questions, you can feel free to put them in chat. And Anna will be with us, I guess. She can kind of see if there's questions there. Maybe at the end we can answer some of those, or we can just get off mute and kind of go one by one and answer some of your questions. All right. So I'm glad to see that some of you are here. I just want to check. Anna, on your end, do you see me for the recording?
Yes, I do.
Okay,
yeah.
Good. All right, perfect. All right, so the talk, I guess, is kind of the relationship between poverty, public health issues, and also the environment. So we're going to kind of talk about all three of those and how they intersect with one another. All right, my thing is not moving forward. Let's try that. All right. So as Dr. Thomas said, I have been very fortunate in my life to travel to many places outside of the United States. I've been actually to every state in the United States except Alaska. But I've been to the poor areas of Mexico, Belize, many of the Caribbean islands. I've been to Jamaica several times, Dominica, and as Dr. Thomas mentioned, Ghana and Rwanda. I have spent an extensive amount of time there teaching radiology and also public health topics. I've also been to Kenya and Uganda, which are East Africa, the DRC, South Africa, Haiti, and other areas, and including 9 countries in Europe. And even within the United States, which you'll see some images here in the United States, we have many areas of poverty that we may not even think about, but they do exist. So we'll look at some of that. So the picture there on the left you see is actually, I took that from the car. I was driving to work every day when I was in Ghana. And this particular corner always caught my eye because you can see the garbage there today, and then tomorrow some of that would be gone and new garbage would be there. So it always fascinated me, you know, one person's garbage was somebody else's treasure, and then other people would also dump it there because they had no place else to dump. So it was just on the street corner. And the picture there on the bottom is me And I was in a very poor rural village in Rwanda. And of course, they saw me, so they wanted to see what kind of food or gifts that I had. So we'll start out with just kind of overview of the environmental issues. You can see in the picture on the right-hand side, the beautiful, absolutely beautiful sky and mountains and the hills there of, vegetation. And then look at the water, right? This is a tributary where the lakes and streams come into, and you can just see the surface of the water filled with garbage and plastic and bottles, and it's a shame, right? And there on the bottom we can see in the city, this is actually a picture taken in Ghana at one of the markets. And the people set up their wares outside, but you can see the garbage in the street. So you know that every time it rains, all that garbage gets washed down into the waters. All right. So when we're looking at environmental issues, we'll talk about land pollution, water pollution, air pollution, and how the land gets degraded from overuse, and the aspect of global warming and climate change, and how it is impacting people around the world, especially those who rely on the land for self-sustaining themselves and families. If they can't farm, and the soil has been contaminated, or it is dry and there's not enough clean water for irrigation, they can't grow. That means they can't eat, which means they starve or they have to move to the cities or elsewhere. And we also see a decline in the biodiversity in the animals' habitats. The water is polluted. They can't drink from that water, and they become sick, ill, and often die off. Right. So poverty. So we're going to kind of look at, does poverty affect the environment? Does the environment affect poverty? 10% of the world's population lives in extreme poverty, meaning that they earn less than $2 per day. And they struggle on just, getting basic needs, healthcare, education, just simple access to water, clean water, and sanitation. And that it does include some parts of the United States as well. So there are 43 countries in the world with the highest poverty rates. Generally, many of them are post-conflict areas. And if you look at the list of 43, many of them are in Africa. And the United Nations had vowed to end extreme poverty by 2030, which is only 9 years from now. And I don't think they're going to make it. And in the recent years, especially with COVID, it has set back a lot of the ability of organizations and the UN and even the United States to help, because in COVID, it really has set back many nations, especially developing nations, at least 10 years in development. And in the COVID, we've experienced our own challenges, not being able to socialize and having to, defer a lot of the activities that we normally do. Family members and friends have gotten sick. But think about some of these nations, and I'll give you an example. In Rwanda, they shut down the nation at a period of time starting in April or May of 2020. These people live day to day on going to the market. My chicken lays eggs, and the woman takes those eggs to the market and gets the flour or the meat or whatever else her household needs. And when they shut down the nation, you couldn't go to the market. You couldn't go and barter and share with other individuals. So whatever you had is what you had, and that's it. So can you imagine a whole year living off, the eggs that your chicken, may produce, right? Or just the certain ingredients that you have, and not being able to barter and share that. Many people have died from starvation because of that. So we see that, our environment, social environment, and the public health environment has really created havoc on the ability to help reduce extreme poverty around the world. It actually has, caused poverty to increase in many countries. And even here in the United States, we have problems with food and other issues because of it. So we're looking at around 68 to 135 million into poverty by 2030. So we'll see more people, in poverty by that time rather than less people. And most of that will occur in Africa and in Southeast Asia. All right, so what are some of the consequences of poverty? All right, a lack of public services. If you don't have money, you can't pay tax, you can't get public services, right? So, here in the United States, you put your garbage can out and somebody takes it, right? You get all riled up because you're going to take the garbage can to the street. Well, these individuals don't have that service, right? So where do they put their waste? Where does it go? And if there is any facilities nearby, they usually cost money, which they don't have that excess money to pay somebody to come and pick the stuff up and bring it somewhere. So also in addition to that, just think about some of the other public services we have, like water supply, right? You turn on your faucet and water comes out. Well, there they don't have plumbing. And they may not have bathroom facilities or other sanitation facilities because of where, where they live, and because of their poverty. Right here on the left, you can see those images look very similar, right? The one on the left is an African home. And you can see the children out there by the side of the house with the clothes hanging. And then in Haiti, the homes look very similar. They're put together with whatever material that they can find and afford to get. Mexico, the same thing. And the picture on the right left is the United States. So you think, oh, that only happens in Africa. No, it's right here in the United States also. So that house right there in the United States is, made of whatever wood pieces that somebody could find to give them shelter. And that happens to be in South Dakota, which gets very, very cold in the winter, like -40 in the winter. So you can imagine how cold and desperate it is to live there. All right. So also water access, right? So is it clean water? How do we access it and supply it? Again, they don't have that public infrastructure to do so. Air quality control also. There's a lack of regulation in many countries. And even if there is a regulation, they don't have the financial ability to abide by those regulations. Even some of the industries are just making it, just giving employment to people, but are not able to fulfill those standards. And we'll see cooking and fuels too. Most developing nations don't have gas or electric stoves. They're still cooking outside on the fire. So again, the smoke and the fumes from that are causing public health issues. And then we'll talk about overpopulation. All right. So here on the right-hand side, you see this is in Ghana. There's a company that was building some housing and they had a dumpster, and they put the dumpster out, for some of the building supplies, etc. But within a week's time, all the neighborhood people dumped the garbage because they had no place to put it in their own backyard or own home. So they just dumped it here, without having a tax base and providing those public services. The peoples are really without the ability to manage any of this. In Rwanda, just for an example, there's over 12 million people, and only 11%, less than 11% of the population works in industries where they actually get a paycheck. And some taxes taken out of that paycheck to help pay for some of the public services. The other, 10.8 million people are bartering system. They live on less than $2 a day, and I have this and I'll trade you for that. And that's how they live. So there is no garbage pickup, and hazardous waste just get thrown out into the land and the streams. We'll see some in landfills in some of the nations, but it's mixed garbage with some, horrible toxins in the landfills, and those hazardous materials are not segregated from, everyday home garbage. So here we see, with waste management, especially in developing nations, there is little or no waste management system. And as a result, they burn and try to bury the garbage. But if that's not done appropriately, there are serious negative effects, especially on the land, on the ozone level, and the air quality levels. The picture on the left there is in Ghana, and you can see the garbage burning in the background. But this is mixed garbage. It could be plastics burning along with food and, other materials all at the same time. So all of that toxic air is just smothering the air of the city. And this garbage dump is actually right in the city. So, there's like a smog that sits over the city all day long because of that. And you can see there in the middle, there are men and boys sifting through the garbage, looking for something that they could resell or make into something else, or, at least make a couple dollars a day from what they find. Also on the right hand upper image, you'll see that's also Ghana. And in the background there, you see the burning garbage, and it goes all the way around this inlet of water. And here on this side was a wasteland of large appliances, refrigerators, televisions, microwaves from other countries, not from Ghana, but from other countries that would come and dump it. And if you know anything about refrigerators and air conditioners, there's Freon in there. And that Freon eventually will leak out into the soil and contaminate the soil, and it can be cancerous. On the picture on the right side on the bottom, you can see that little boy, trying to find some treasures, and as he's walking his goat, and that goat is eating whatever he can find in the dump, which that goat will later be eaten by that little boy's family. So it's probably not very healthy on the livestock as well. And right behind the little boy, if you can see, is some stagnant water. So as some of this garbage breaks down, it's going to seep into the water and into the soil. In addition, it's stagnant water. So now we have mosquitoes breeding in these areas, because this is actually a wetland that is used for dumping. So it's seeping right into the water supply system. So they have parasites and malaria and other public health concerns as a result of this. And here, again, just some images. This is right here in the United States. This is the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation in South Dakota. And you can see, they're just so poor that how, something isn't useful anymore. They have no place to put it. You can see, the car here and the refrigerator and the mattresses and all kinds of things. They can't afford to take this to a dump. There aren't any public dumps or pickups, so it just sits there. Right, in the left-hand bottom corner is Haiti. I took this picture when I was in Haiti a few years ago. They suffered a horrific earthquake. It's about 10 years ago. And this house actually was 2 stories. It collapsed down, but now they're living in the second story. And you can see that the garbage is just all over the road. So therefore, every time it rains, right down the side of the road goes all the garbage along with the water. And here is that runoff water spilling right into the Atlantic Ocean. So, you can imagine what stuff is in that water. It can be, all kinds of waste products. And the image on the bottom right there is Newark, New Jersey. This is a elementary school right there. And this property was abandoned at some point. And the neighborhood has called it a dumping ground because, again, they can't afford to, get rid of the waste, and they don't know what to do with it. All right. The city itself doesn't have a real good waste management system besides just picking up garbage cans. All right. So much of the waste and big things like the van you see, refrigerators, etc., are just thrown into the property. All right. So also one of the issues is waste dumping. A lot of these nations, as I said, were conflict nations, very poor, and often they are seeking ways to make, governmental revenue. And Ghana was one of those countries who did not think ahead. And in order to, make money, millions of dollars a year, they were accepting garbage from the United States and from Canada and other countries. So the ships would come with all these containers of garbage, and they would just empty them, right on the land there near the water. And you can see again in the background that water. This is an inlet in the city coming from the Atlantic Ocean. And they would just dump the garbage, and then the ships would leave and leave all that garbage behind. And you can see this young man, he's probably happy as a clam. He found a big circuit board out of some type of a computer or television or something. So he's now going to break that all apart and try to get the small amount of minerals that he can and try to resell them for a couple bucks. But look what it's doing to the land, and the water supply around there. This is an image of Bangladesh. And it's kind of the graveyard of big ships and the ships that bring goods from, China to the US or from, all around the globe. They just, when the ship is done and, isn't able to do its job anymore, they just dock them in Bangladesh. And there they are. And the people, it does give the Bangladesh men work. All right. So that was one thing that I guess brought them here in the first place, was to give the men work. So you can see the men on the top of the ship up here tearing apart the ship. You can see all the hull and everything being taken apart, and then they bring those pieces to the land, and the metals and whatever, and then they're able to melt them down, etc. But meanwhile, they're polluting all the water around there. Right. And in Somalia, the same thing. The ships go off the coast of Africa and they dump garbage right into the Indian Ocean, not Indian Ocean. What is that ocean? not the Atlantic, maybe it is the Indian Ocean, along the Somalian coast there. And eventually they, end up on the beaches. And you can see these two individuals with their radiation protection gear on and their face masks, because whatever this is, they have a monitor here. It must have some radioactivity to it. And here is Greenpeace. Again, this is in the Ivory Coast. They do the same thing. These shipping companies just dump the ships along the coast. And then the people in the country have to, they're tearing apart the ships for the metal to make some money. And e-waste is really the worst out of them all. All right, e-waste, and you can see these are some circuit boards, probably out of cell phones or computers. They have, and the copper wires. There's some precious metals in here. So this is a young man from Ghana who probably searched through that garbage dump all day long to get a handful of this stuff. And then he'll take it to a place where they'll break it down even smaller into the separate pieces of coltan or tantalum that's in cell phones, or the copper wire and the other pieces. And he might get $1 a day for all that hard work, right? The picture on the right, you can see, is a same thing in India. These young men are sitting there breaking up the circuit boards. Again, they don't realize that a lot of these circuit boards are radioactive. There's radioactive material in these. So they're sitting there all day long with a small amount of radioactivity coming off of these circuit boards all day long. Right? And the woman on the left here is the same thing. This is in China, and she's kind of created a makeshift smelter. So she's breaking down the parts off the circuit boards and then melting them down so that she can go ahead and sell them. And there's a little girl in China sitting among the dump with all the wires that somebody is trying to separate, right? So this is definitely not a healthy occupation to be working at. And I just put a list here of some of these are the top 10 countries that other countries dump their e-waste in. The United States and Ghana has since seized, US has since seized their garbage dumping in Ghana. I'm not quite sure where it's going now because of a lot of publicity, but Canada sends stuff to the Philippines. Italy sends stuff to Nigeria. Russia sends stuff to Somalia and China. So again, these countries are still the dumping grounds of the electronic waste, especially. And obviously their environments and personal public health is being harmed by this practice. The water access, also water quality around the world is still not where it should be. There's 2.2 billion people that don't have access to clean water. And here on the left side, you can see this community, they're washing their dishes. And see where they're washing their dishes? It's in the leftover rainwater that's on the road. And again, without sanitation, they don't have plumbing and bathrooms, so you do know where they go, right? Right outside their homes on the soil. And eventually when it rains, that all goes down the road and ends up in this rainwater, which they are now washing their dishes in. So it is not a healthy environment. The picture on the right-hand side are two children in Rwanda, actually in Jamaica, I'm sorry, trying to gather water, and it's a stagnant pool of water, which often has parasites and Giardia and all kinds of other things within that. If you look at the map there on the bottom, you can kind of get an idea of you know, our global problem when it comes to access to water. The red and orange areas, which are mostly in Middle Africa there, Central Africa, parts of Asia, are less than 5% of the population has access to water. All right, so they're drinking this rainwater or out of these pools. There is no access to clean water. And the orange areas, or the lighter orange areas, are about 50 to 75%. When you get to the light blue, then you're talking about 76% of the population has access, and the darker blues, which you see is Canada, the US, parts of Mexico, you know, Europe and Russia and Australia there, you know, 90% or better have access to water. And water pollution, again, the garbage dumping definitely has a bearing. Again, here the top picture is Ghana, and you can see all of that electronic waste, the televisions, or you know, air conditionings, all kinds of garbage, and that's just seeping into the soil, right into that water. And that water is also for fishing. Ghana is a fishing country. That means that they are, oops, I try to let somebody in at the same time. They are, you know, reliant on the fishing.
I can't find that.
So if somebody could turn mute, please. Thank you. You can see here is a fish kill. And this water has been so polluted that all these fish have died. And again, the fishermen rely on the fish. And if they're all dead, they have no economic stability. And I've been to a fish kill, and it stinks. It's horrible. And this poor man is trying to clean up, you know, fish by fish, and clean up the mess. And hopefully they can clean up the water so that they can return to fishing. Here in the middle is another picture of Haiti, where this is the road, and then you have the drainage on the side of the road. They don't have sewers like we do. It's just a drainage ditch. So all the garbage and water from the rain just goes right down into the water sources. In the bottom there left, you can also see you know, the garbage in Ghana. All right, another dump they have there. So you know, obviously all of these contaminants end up in the water supply. And about 2.2 billion do not have access to improved water sources, clean water. You know, many of these individuals use the streams and the lakes and the rivers and whatever means of water supply that they can find. And, you know, the bio waste, you know, please mute, thank you. The bio waste can be absorbed, you know, again into the water supply. You can see here, this is a picture of Rwanda again, where the cows are, you know, getting their water from this mucky supply. And these 4 children are waiting for the cows to move so they can fill up their containers. Those containers are then carried back home, and they're used for cooking. They cook with them, they bathe with the water, they drink the water. So you can imagine the negative, you know, health effects. Often the water is going to be contaminated with parasites, etc. This is a picture in Haiti where the kids in the community was having a grand old time. Right, he's washing his dishes. This person is washing their dishes. This mom is bathing her children and then redoing her hair. These kids are probably taking a bath too. So they're, you know, doing whatever domestic things you would do in your own home with running water and a clean environment. This is where they are. So again, and the animals are probably right nearby, also right there in the water. Some countries are starting to work on some public services. These are images in Rwanda, and only recently, has Rwanda been able to develop some of the water treatment facilities, and Culligan, which is an American water company, is the one that has gone out there to help them kind of build the infrastructure. Here on the top picture, you can see the inspector. He's checking out that water. I don't know, that water doesn't look all that clean to me, but I guess it is being filtered out with some of the bacteria and parasites and whatnot. This is a very large facility outside the city. One thing that always interests me, though, is great. So we're cleaning the water and it's being purified. The waste is being removed and it's being chlorinated so that it is healthier water. But all the homes, if you see along the hills here, are small clay or brick homes that don't have plumbing. So yeah, we have a great clean water supply, but that clean water can't necessarily get to the homes on a regular basis. So they have a long way to go before they will reach the level that we're at here in the United States. With you turn on your faucet and it works. You can hop in the shower and the water comes down, right? Here they don't have that yet. All right, so the map on the bottom is the proportion of people that have, improved drinking water supply. So again, if you look at the color coding, the red, the darker color, there is only about 50% of the population has access. All right. The Canada, I was surprised. Canada actually is only around 76% versus the United States and Mexico. There is a lot of indigenous populations in Canada, especially in northern Canada, the Eskimos and other native Canadians, I guess, and native North Americans that live off the grid, all right, and don't have necessarily access again to public water and public services. But you can see Australia, the developing nations, and even some parts of South America, have access to some clean water. All right, air quality, that's another huge issue and effect on the environment, is regulation. Often countries do have regulations, as I said, but they're not stringent. There is no enforcement. And even if there was, the companies that are violating wouldn't be able to afford the fines and stuff. So, excuse me. So this is actually a police vehicle in Jamaica. And you can see this is a governmental car and it's, spewing out, fumes from the back because, the vehicle is older, probably needs a lot of repair. But again, there's not a lot of tax dollars to keep things up to, perhaps the standards that we're used to. Right. This is a plant in Mexico, again, right along the edge of the water, probably dumping stuff into the water, and then the fumes that are going right up into the air. And here, this is in Newark, New Jersey again. There are many plants in Newark, and Newark has been notorious for violating environmental protection regulations, but again, they don't end up paying because they tend not to have the funds and they are employing people in the area. So for them to shut down would cause greater havoc on the economy in those areas. So it's kind of a catch-22 situation sometimes. All right. Also cooking fuels. This is a picture up here in the top right corner of a woman from Rwanda, very typical. And she's cooking, and they cook all day long. And generally, most of the food that they eat are stews, that kind of thing. So they boil them all day long, and they try to, heat them extensively. One, to help try to kill the bacteria that may be in the water that they're using for cooking. But the smoke, and actually, I lived in an apartment right next to here, and I was on the second floor. So all the smoke used to come right into my room constantly. So in the morning when she stoked it up, there was a big black cloud. And then in the afternoons, the same thing when she went to go, make the fire big again. The fumes just came right into the buildings, and it gets trapped in those buildings. So, and here too, she's there all day long. All right. So there's definitely health effects for these women, especially that are there cooking all day long. And we also see, some of the fuel sources too. Many of countries that are poor, they don't have the fancy new 2000, 2021 cars. Most of the cars that they're driving around are from the 1960s, 70s, and maybe 80s. They're leaded fuel gas users. They don't have the air emission control regulations. And again, even if they did, it would be difficult to enforce them. So you can see this is a car in Jamaica that was just spewing down the road. All right, and it's an old model Toyota, I think. But again, here in the United States, not every state has banded burning of garbage. Michigan and Minnesota are one of the biggest offenders. A lot of people live off the grid. They live in rural areas. So they figure, nobody's going to be bothered by this. But again, it's going up into the ozone layers and causing havoc in other places. And Minnesota just only in 2020 just amended some of its regulations so that only certain types of garbage can be burned. But Michigan, you can see here, is burning wood and whatever else, and that's just going right up into the environment. And overpopulation is another problem. And it's kind of, does poverty cause overpopulation? Does overpopulation cause poverty? They're kind of hand in hand with many of these countries. Again, this is a picture in Ghana. It's one of my favorite markets, the Kumasi market. And you can see the massive number of people on the streets, and the cars and the vans and the buses, and again, all the emission controls they don't have, spewing out the fumes and all the people and whatnot, all in a very close area confinement. People that rely on going to the city or going to the market and selling their wares on a regular basis. So, often overpopulation as a result of lack of education, not understanding the impact of children, or just the lack of education in family planning, birth control. Sometimes it's religious, sometimes it's cultural, so those are things that are not going to change overnight, that it takes generations sometimes to change thinking and the way that the culture looks upon having children and how many in the family, etc. Government funding over such controls and being able to provide services are not always available, and people individually can't afford to go to family planning services, etc. So overpopulation occurs, especially in poor nations. And you can see here about 50% of the world's population lives in urban areas. Mexico City, look at those beautiful mountains in the background, right? And there's the big city, right? 22 million. Mexico City used to be one of the largest cities. It still is, but other cities have now beat its population. But 22 million people in one little area, right? Tokyo is one of the largest now, and that's 37.8 million. Mumbai, 29 million. Delhi, 23 million, right? New York City alone is 20 million. And Lagos, Nigeria has 22 million people in one area. Again, you can see the picture on the bottom left. This is Lagos, Nigeria, in the city center, and you can see all those buses, and none of them, they're old. These buses are from the 1970s and 80s, and they're just spewing out smoke all day long, and the population walking and congregating in these areas with no plumbing or sanitation or public bathrooms, etc. So where everything goes. All right. And Los Angeles is not as populated, 3.5 million. However, where it is situated on the coastline, and the weather, this smog, there's a atmospheric inversion in LA, and the warm air keeps the colder air down and the smog down. So there's always this layer over Los Angeles of all the smog, which again is not a healthy environment. And we can see here with overpopulation, again, the blue areas are less than 5% of the population that does not have access to sanitation, right? And Europe, you can see, in Australia. So those countries, we have access, all right? And the red areas, of course, again, Central Africa and Southeast Asia are the highest. And they have, more than 50% of their populations do not have access to sanitation, to a bathroom. All right. This happens to be a hand washing station in one of the hospitals I was working at. Basically, this is filled with water. You kind of lean it forward, the water comes out. You wet your hands, you take some soap, and then you rinse your hands. And they don't have Perel, stations for hand sanitation. This is it. All right. And the picture on the bottom right hand there is a toilet at a school. And you can actually see the school in the background there. So you squat and hopefully you hit the hole. And it goes right down into the ground, into the soil, and hopefully is biodegraded at some point in time. But again, it can be contaminated with E. coli and parasites and all kinds of other things that are not very healthy for the population. And other problems when we talk about poverty, again, the need for money, economics, right? So mining is often one of the key industries in developing nations because they need the financial stability. And here you can see on the left is a group of men in Rwanda who are mining limestone. And limestone dust is not good for you. And you can see not one of them has any masks on. Their arms, their clothes, their legs, their shoes, probably their eyes, their nose, all filled every single day with the limestone dust. And they go home and they probably wear those clothes, all day long, every day. So the health issues that these young men, most of them die lung cancers by the time they're 50. And Jamaica there, they also have a huge problem in Jamaica with mining. Many countries have come in and just devastated the lands in Jamaica. Belgium and Netherlands and Germany was there, England was there, many countries, and they just come in and they mine as much. And then again, they're supposed to come in and help the economy and infrastructure of the country. That's what they promise. But usually they come in, they mine, and they leave. And they're mining bauxite and other minerals used for aluminum production and stuff. And here on the bottom, you can see in the DRC, these young men are basically put into labor looking for coltan. Coltan is the mineral that our entire wireless communication systems rely on. And from the coltan, it's a black ore, and from the coltan, they break it down into a tantalum, and tantalum is what is used. So you can kind of see the environment that these poor young men work under. You can see that the military and other local men with their machine guns and guns, really putting pressure on these men to work all day under these horrible conditions. So please do think of that when you are using your cell phone, that your cell phone that you have in your hand works because of these men and breaking their backs and working in this environment. And of course, it's not great for the environment because they're just taking the forests down and digging into the earth, really deforesting the areas. And it is really causing a problem in DRC and in Rwanda. It is, placing a lot of devastation on the biodiversity and the animals that are living in those areas. And again, the fish you can see on the bottom from the contaminated water, the deforestations that are occurring because they want to mine the land or they need the wood for building. These are two pictures I took when I went to visit the silverback gorillas in Rwanda. And again, their natural habitat is being encroached by the miners and the deforestation that's occurring in that area. And there on the top right-hand corner, I'm not sure if you can tell, but that is a woman. She just went into the forest and cut down some bushes and trees, and she's going to take that home. And that is some fuel for her fire for cooking. So again, just the natural course of their ability to, work every day has some effect on the environment. And to kind of bring us around, looking at these two young girls with their bags, and they're going through the dump. First of all, they're supposed to be in school, and they're not, right? Because they have to make money for their families, right? So that they can eat and live. In the top right-hand corner, I don't know if you can see up there, but there's some men up there with their cows. So those poor cows are grazing through this, garbage dump all day long. So it's not the greatest sanitary conditions for the animals either. So these young girls probably do this every day or almost every day going through this. So it is definitely not a good, healthy environment for the young girls. We know that there's all kinds of contaminants, toxins, cancerous materials in these because, again, they don't separate waste and hazardous waste. It's all dumped in the same place. So, the effects of poverty and, on the environment are huge. So we need to solve the problem of poverty in many areas to eliminate some of these huge sources that are affecting our environment. And as I kind of covered, water pollution, air pollution, land pollution because of the dumping and the mining, degradation of the environment because of the deforestation and mining, and definitely a decline in the biodiversity in many of these areas just because they can't survive in the environments anymore. If they can, they try to find new homes and habitat. All right. That comment doesn't want to move forward again. There we go. All right, so what is the solution, right? I can ask you some of these questions. What is the solution? But we need to close the gaps between what the policy is saying we should be doing and actually attaining the solution. Often I mentioned with like air quality control, the regulations may be there, but if they can't afford to enforce them, and the people can't meet those expectations, the problem isn't going to be solved, right? Enhanced learning and being, looking at the data, at other countries and, working to improve, some results, even if it's small at a time, watching the data change and helps to stay on track for those things. Doesn't want to go. There it goes. Investing in infrastructure and prevention. Again, how do we recycling plants? Here in the United States, often we take the garbage to a dump or the town or somebody picks it up and they bring it to recycling facilities. And we're not very good at that even here in the United States, but we're probably 100 times better than some of these other developing nations. So investing in those infrastructures, investing in the ability for the governments to collect the waste and bring, have a garbage truck come by and pick it up on a regular basis and then sort through it and, recycle whatever is needed or what can be recycled from that. It makes a huge difference, right? Also expanding, cooperation and coordination between countries. And between organizations, sometimes like the Greenpeace, is all about water, and they're looking at the water and the water environment and how some of this dumping off the coasts, plays a role. But what about the land, and other agencies that need to coordinate their efforts? And also, recognizing what these challenges create and cause, and understanding them. So that's what this presentation was kind of about, is to look at some of the causes of the problems we have with the environment. And, now we look at it and see, well, poverty is an issue, right? So if we can improve that, maybe we can then, improve the environment, right? So we need to be able to first look at that. All right, so why should we help the poor? It's our environment, our health, our children, and our own peace of mind, right? So these poor children here, and actually this is a car I had when I was in Rwanda, and I stopped to look at a waterfall, and these children came down to look at me. If you notice, their bellies are sticking out, not because they're overfed. It is because those bellies are full of parasites. Drinking the dirty water. And again, the parasites just live off of everything within their bodies and they get bloated like that. So, we can help these poor children by cleaning up the environment and allowing them, to have a clean access of water. All right. I think that is it. I don't know in the chat. I didn't look to see. Are there any questions in the chat? Let me pull up.
No,
And
no questions.
no questions in the chat. All right. Anybody have a question that is here? You can just unmute and ask me.
Hi, Dr. Konn.
Hello there.
Hi, will this session be recorded and available to us so we can check it out?
Yes, it should be recorded and it will be available on the International Education website under Global Citizenship Project, I believe, right, Anna?
I can also mail it to them, email it to them. I'll email it to all the people that are on, all the participants. I will.
Oh, okay.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're
All
welcome.
right.
I enjoyed the session, Dr. Konn. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right.
Thank you. Anybody else? Nobody wants to talk to me?
It's a great.
Well, I'll throw something out. This is Catherine Edward. Hi.
Hi.
Have you seen in the past 10 years any progress? Because this is such a sad story. It seems like we are destroying our own world, and there's so many problems that are even larger that we could solve these. But have you seen any progress in the past 10 years?
Yeah, I think, like I said, in Ghana, now the United States has stopped sending their garbage to Ghana and has, worked out agreements instead of, Ghana was making money. Ghana needed revenue. He wanted to improve its infrastructure, and Ghana has. Ghana is still a developing nation, but they do have a greater public services and infrastructure than some of the other African nations do. But they're still, way behind us. But the, idea of the money. So I think, there was a lot of intervention in Ghana and public awareness of what was happening about the garbage in Ghana. So the US has stopped sending garbage there and instead is helping in other monetary ways and economic development, and also helps subsidize the healthcare system. So that's the ways that, we can change things, is if we can improve their health and improve economics, then they're not sifting through the garbage to make $1 a day, and causing these public health concerns and also ruining the environment. But Rwanda has, like with the water quality, they are working on, improving water filtration for certain communities. But the waste, like I remember walking down the road and you just look down at the river and there's, refrigerators and televisions and all kinds of things because people just don't know what to do with it. But I know in recent years, Rwanda now has trucks that go around. And if you leave it on the street, eventually the truck will come and pick it up. But it could be there for a while. So whatever is in it will be, the rain comes down and into the soil anyway. But they are trying. But I think we need a much more massive effort, especially in these areas, if we're going to reduce, air pollution and, water pollution. Did I answer your question?
Yes.
Good.
Fortunately, it's not always the best answer because it's a continuous problem. I'm so happy I should say, it was very informative that you showed the pictures in the United States itself. I lived about 10 years ago in upstate New York, and there were no zoning laws. This is because it was rural community outside of the area of Saratoga. And
Right.
those pictures that you showed us could have been from that area. I was just shocked when I saw the garbage you'd see a beautiful home within 20 feet, you'd see this landscape that was congested with everything that was thrown out and a tent because someone
Ye-
was living in the tent.
Right, right,
We have
right.
these problems in our own country, and perhaps our own legislations could start to make an effect. And I don't know if we're that progressive even here in the US.
Yeah, it's the enforcement that's hard. You know, because a lot of, even with our manufacturing today, you know, the fines are small compared to the cost of fixing the problem. So often the companies just say, fine, I'll pay the $50,000 fine because it would cost me $2 million to fix my plant. So often that is what happens. And even in personal and residential situations, the same thing, you know, that, you know, a large farm becomes dumping ground. We have that in New Jersey. I was recently reading, I think it's in Manalapan, this very, you know, wealthy area with, but this property, a big house, lots of property, and he was allowing people to dump, you know, the construction workers and all kinds of other people dumping stuff on his property. And the EPA came in and realized that a lot of it was toxic, and it was bad, you know. So, but for him, the fine was, you know, whatever it was, $100,000. It wasn't any big deal, I guess, you know, but he is being taken to court again. So we'll see what happens. But it's happening. It's money, you know, dump it on the land. Who cares, you know, 20 years from now. Right.
Dr.
So
Konn,
that's
can
a
I just
problem.
ask you a question?
Sure.
Hi, this is Marley. Did you just say that the story you just told was that Manalapan?
Yeah, I think it's out that way. What else is
So
out in Manalapan? Manalapan?
that's Manalapan is where I live, so I'm just a little more curious about what
Yeah.
exactly you're talking about.
Yeah, it's in that area. I'd have to look up it, but it's recent, you know. I mean, the guy's in court right now.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, it happens, you know, farmland, even here in Tom's River, there was farmland off of Route 37 near Lakehurst, and the same thing, it had been a dumping ground in the 1980s, but they didn't realize that all the toxins went into the water supply, and most of the people in that area, their water supplies came from the water wells, right, which is water under the surface. So all those toxins were in their water well, you know, the water from the wells, and the families in that area didn't know until many children were dying. Yep.
Hi, Terry. This is
Hi.
Peggy. Hi. Excellent presentation. But like Catherine said, a very sad story. But, you know, the next time that we complain that we have to take our garbage can out to the street level,
Right.
yeah, we can remember, you know, this presentation and note how blessed we are to have a system where the garbage is picked up in front of your house.
Right. Yeah, I know. It's, you know, and even public water, you know, you just think about, you turn on your faucet and it's water. You know, we complain, oh, I don't want to drink our water, but, you know, we spend a lot of money on bottled water. But our water is clean, it's safe, it's gone through, you know, the filtering and purification, you know, that other countries just don't even have. So.
Yeah, and I've traveled to Ghana a few times, and I mean, the pictures that you show here are absolutely exactly what you see in some of those areas. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Ghana, I gotta tell you, the Ghana people are the most beautiful and friendly people in the planet.
They are.
They are. They're happy as can be, no matter what the conditions are. I'm always amazed. You know, and they're striving and they're working hard to improve, you know, the environment and, you know, their public health and everything. It's just very difficult when things keep knocking you down. And I know I work with a school in Accra, and, you know, COVID-19 has really put the whole city in, you know, crisis. You know, it's sad, you know, and it's going to take them a few years to recover, even, you know, like us, to recover from that. But, you know, trying to get these infrastructures that they really need, you know, it's going to be a while. Anybody else? No? All right, guys.
I actually have a question.
Go ahead.
It's Adam. So we know how that pandemic has kind of set back the countries stricken in poverty. So I was thinking about like the vaccines and stuff, and I know everyone's not very comfortable in like our country, but for them, it's impairing their entire life. Do you think that they'd be willing to, or do you think a rollout would be possible in their situation? Do you think it would be beneficial for them to get it? Because I know the whole bartering system.
Oh yeah, definitely. They have to have it. They have to have it. You know, the rollout's going to be long. You know, again, it's the cost of you know, the immunizations here in the United States. We're very lucky. Our government has enough financial surplus through our taxes and whatever that, you know, basically, you know, people are getting the vaccinations. You know, we're complaining that it's taking too long, but at least it's happening. And if you want it, you're going to get it. In some of these other nations, they have to wait because they don't have the financial ability for the country to buy the vaccination. So they have to wait until the UN and other countries like the United States are able to provide them with some funding or some free stock and supply. You know, same thing happened with AIDS. You know, AIDS became you know, a global epidemic, and we had to stop it, and the only way we could stop it was to be able to, you know, provide the AIDS drugs to all over the world, you know, in order for less people to die from it, and to create treatment and etc. So the same thing here. You know, they're starting. Many of the countries have some supply, but again, it's hard. You have to imagine, you know, I went out to visit a hospital that was in a rural community in Rwanda. And literally, when I turned off the main road, it took me 3 hours on a bumpy road to get there. So those individuals who are way out there, you know, just don't have access to health care like, you know, you and I do. You know, so you don't feel good, you go to an urgent care center, you go to the hospital, you go to the doctors. Here, you know, here it's a whole different story. The same thing even in Ghana. When I took students to Ghana with me, we set up a health clinic in a small village. You know, and some of the Brookdale students were did kind of lectures or little talks to the women about nutrition and about, you know, you know, their personal health and stuff. And let me tell you, in the middle of the presentation, one woman stood up and said, well, that's great. Yeah, I understand I got to eat meat, but I haven't had meat in 10 years. I can't afford it. What do I do? You know, and I was like, you know, and I felt bad for the two students because they didn't have an answer. You know, they were like, oh, you can't get meat. No. So, you know, everything that we understand is very different there. You know, the woman was like, I'm lucky if I can give my children rice or flour for dinner that night, which both of those things, rice and flour, have no nutritional value, right? They have, you know, relatively nothing. So, you know, they need the meat and the vegetables and other things. So if you can't afford it, you can't be nutritionally healthy. You know, so they need to, you know, be able to stop the COVID so they can go back to the market and they can barter. Like in Rwanda right now, they're still on shutdown. So that means it's been over a year where they can't leave their homes. That's tough in an environment where you're bartering with your neighbors for, you know, goods. So it's tough. All right, anybody else? All right, guys. Well, I thank you very much for coming, and I hope you learned something from the lecture. And you can always email me if you have questions after we're done, tkonn@brookdalecc.edu. All right, guys, have a great day, and see you at another presentation soon.
Thanks, Terry. That was
Thank
an
you.
presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Thank you, Anna.
Okay, Terry, thanks a lot. We'll see you
All
soon,
right.
I hope.
All right. Bye.